Sculptures from West and Central Africa constituted some of the most significant structures of invention for Picasso in the early 20th century. With this exhibition, I wanted to move away from the mystifying lens of primitivism in order to track some of the clear permutations of Picasso's relationship with African sculpture from around 1906 to 1921. One of the first objects from Africa, from Central Africa, to inspire Picasso was a Congoville statuette from Congo-Brazzaville. It was acquired by Henri Matisse in the fall of 1906, and that Picasso saw at Matisse's place shortly thereafter. According to several accounts, Picasso was fascinated by this object. He held it in his hands throughout the evening and returned to his studio to work all night, furiously scrawling heads and faces that were more radically stylized than anything he'd created up to that point. The heads and faces Picasso scrawled that night bear a resemblance to the Congoville statuette, especially in the descriptions of the large staring eyes that seem to correspond to the large inlaid pupilless eye of the statuette. These figures, these heads and faces, would evolve over the next few months, also in response to Picasso's early visits to the Ethnographic Museum, the Trocadero Museum in Paris, where he saw other works of African sculpture, to inform the studies and the final composition of his famous painting Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, completed in 1907. Also in 1907, Picasso made sculptural responses to this Congoville statuette, notably in a work simply called Small Figure, or otherwise known as Doll. This is a 1964 bronze version of an initial wooden sculpture made in the summer of 1907. And you can see how its oversized head and pronounced brow, elongated torso and small legs resemble the composition of the Congoville statuette. But in other ways, it's very different from the smooth contours of the statuette. As you can see, Picasso is accentuating a kind of coarse facture. The chisel marks are visible. You can see that it's been carved from wood in a technique that seems to materialize what Picasso imagines African sculptural aesthetics to be, rather than a close study of the actual object. With the advent of Cubism in 1909, Picasso's geometric faceting that he developed for Les Demoiselles d'Avignon comes to gradually suffuse the entire composition. So there's an integration of figure and ground. And this is happening during a time when Picasso's own African art collection is expanding dramatically. Picasso is collecting works from curio dealers and flea markets, and maybe trading objects with other artists or collectors. And at this time, photographs in his studio show the increasing presence of African sculptural works surrounding him as he paints in his studio. There are two reproductions here of photographs of fellow artists with African objects, although in partial view, clearly recognizable behind him. In particular, in the portrait of Auguste Herbin, there's the Gabon figure that we see here, as well as a Congovili slit gong from Angola in partial view behind a post. And the slit gong is also visible, more visible in a portrait of Marie Laurencin, also in Picasso's studio. This is around in 1911. So we know that these objects were acquired by 1911, and they were present in his studio. And my thesis is they facilitated this integration of figure and ground that characterized analytic cubism. After World War I, Picasso's early interest in African art and the influence of African art on cubism had also generated broader interest in African sculpture, such that now a new generation of art dealers sold modern art alongside African art. Picasso, in his own collecting, pivoted from flea markets and curio shops to now start to engage in trade with dealers. So a famous early dealer of African art, Paul Guillaume, had shown a clamshell-eyed mask from Côte d'Ivoire such as this in an early exhibition in 1914 in New York. And it seems likely that Picasso acquired this very similar mask from Paul Guillaume. In any case, by 1919, this mask is published, credited to the collection of Picasso. And in 1921, Picasso makes a photograph entitled Olga at the Piano in Fontainebleau, where you can see the mask is hanging above the piano in Picasso's home alongside other works of art. So we see a transformation over the course of this period from African objects as sort of exotic or seen as beyond the pale of aesthetic interest to now becoming, entering the canon of art, the Western canon of world art.